My only problem now is that this thing sounds like a Sherman tank. You see the Sherman tank coming? Yeah, that's. I think people expect to have like that buzzing sound, you know? But no, it's a Sherman tank.
June 1st. Stopped by the shop today to check on Carlos's progress. GB38 is the first time he's integrated a motor into the actuator. He seemed pleased that it was functional, but to me it sure didn't seem to fix any noise issues. GB38 sounds louder to me than GB36.
Entrepreneurs often have blinders on, that they're so focused on what they're doing that they can't pay attention to anything else. That can be great because they can be super focused, but can also be bad.
I know that this thing, I can repeat it. If I need to do minor tricks, I can do it quickly. But I wanted to try something different on the way the gear parts, the gear blocks are moving.
Yeah, well, you're the judge of that. I'm just so used to when you get a prototype back, you spend 2-3 weeks. You spend enough time to go fix 10 things for one.
And we talk about blind persistence in the research quite a bit, where it's difficult for entrepreneurs to take advice from others when they see the downfalls that are coming.
Because they're not able to take advice or attention to other things that they need to.
June 4th.
I'm going to take a slow motion of the teeth, and then we can determine exactly what's going on.
Over the weekend, Carlos cut little windows into the GB38 so he could film the internal movement with a high-speed camera. He's hoping to find the cause of the noise and vibration. The camera films at an amazing rate of 8,500 frames per second, compared to a film camera of 30 frames per second. It's the kind of camera they use to film bullets from a gun.
The slow motion videos I'm taking, and we're talking about 8,500 frames per second. So if there's any vibration, if there's any shaking, you will see that. And you see that the output moves really smooth. So I don't think it's a vibration issue, it's more of a noise issue.
The video footage gave Carlos an idea to fix the noise.
I thought about that thing, and the blocks are moving the output. This hand is the output, and the blocks are approaching quickly. This motion is really fast. This thing will overshoot a little bit, and it's going to crash into the output ring, and that's going to create a little shock. So why not make the fingers or the teeth a little deeper, so we have a clearance there. It will not crash. Seems to be like a good idea, and immediately I did it. Put it in the software. Put the things on the CNC machine, and it works. And now if I increase the speed, the noise is at least half. So I expect from here we can start improving more and more on the noise, and I think we are getting closer and closer, you know, to a final product.
We're all here. I have your screen open here. There we go.
Each time we meet, I'm going to put up this little chart which indicates, the critical milestones or what we need to secure seed funding this fall. And the color coding is, green is complete and red is critical. So we haven't made a lot of progress, and clearly there's a number of factors that we need besides just the product, but product is the most critical one. I'm sure you guys are well aware, I don't have to say it, but that, the initial seed funding that I provided is only going to take us so far. And in order to raise the next round, investors are going to want to see a much more mature prototype, not necessarily a released product, but a working prototype.
I think our original product plan, we planned for 2 prototypes. So 38 was the first of the 2, and 39 theoretically should be the last prototype, but it sounds like we have more work to do.
Carlos, I know that your design methodology for each prototype to resolve one critical problem, but given the tight timetable, I really think you need to at least consider modifying that methodology and hold off on starting the next prototype, be that GB39 or GB40, until all known problems are solved.
How many more prototypes do we think we're going to need to do, and how long is each one going to take, so we have an idea of when we could tell customers they might have something. Now, what about vibration testing or vibration specs? What's our thinking there?
At the beginning, there was a single thing, right? Noise and vibration, basically, both going together. Now with the improvements, we are low on noise, but we are even lower on vibration.
So Carlos, when I stopped by earlier this week, you gave me a demo of the reduction of noise, which, don't get me wrong, is great. However, in order to raise the kind of funds that we're looking for, we're going to need to demonstrate a lot more progress in the coming weeks. And sophisticated investors are going to want to see real quantitative data, not only on the noise, but on the other performance parameters such as torque and backlash and torsional stiffness, etc.
How are you going to measure the torsional stiffness trade-off and the backlash trade-off?
We have to continue making a testing bench.
When are we planning on doing the stiffness testing on that prototype? So is that an action item that we have to?
Yeah, I think we have to include to create a testing protocol.
I'll update this document by noon today, and everyone can take a look at it.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Today, Jim and Carlos are meeting with Dr. Andrew Katz, a potential angel investor. Dr. Katz is a well-known Dallas vascular surgeon and very experienced with surgical robots.
We have 5 robotic machines in the hospital that we use for surgery. In the last 10 years, the robots have invaded the surgical practice and separated a lot of the surgeons into people that can do it, people that cannot do it.
Dr. Katz also has a very interesting hobby, building experimental aircraft.
Seed rounds are where investors play. It's after the friends and family have put in all the money they can and before you can attract the later stage venture capital money. So it's right when a company's starting to get a product maybe developed at the earliest stage and where they need more money than their friends, family, and credit cards will provide.
Our plan is to raise a maximum of $500,000 in seed money before July, including the $200,000 I have already contributed.
An angel investor is an individual or a group of individuals that invest their own money into a startup business.
The $500,000 will fund the company into the fall, at which time we believe Carlos will have proven out his design. At that point, we will seek to raise another $5 to $10 million, but this time from venture capitalists.
Ordinarily, a venture capitalist invests larger chunks of money, the enterprise is further along, and the money they get is not theirs. But when you get it down dead nuts, an angel investor is writing his own check. A venture capitalist is spending somebody else's money.
The investment at this point is highly risky and being offered at $1 per share. But once the technology is proven out in the fall, the price will double to $2 a share.
For me, it's easy. I have 5 things that I look for. I look at the entrepreneur. Has he identified a market? Does he have a team? Can he do that without being resource constrained? And is he committed to getting his team, himself, and his investors paid?
So we're tapping into a natural market that's growing. The market for robotics is about $2 billion now, growing to about $5 billion over the next 5 to 6 years.
Based on the assumption that Carlos here gets the product working before the end of the year, we are forecasting about $2 million in revenue next year, 2019, growing to over $300 million by 2023.
We've got a great team, plus we've got people that have built companies before. So we've taken new products to the market. My company was the one that brought video to the PC in the mid-90s. By 1995, half of all the PCs that shipped had our graphics chip in it. So I told Carlos if he was in Silicon Valley, he could probably get a $10 million valuation for the company right now, not a $4 million valuation. And there's no reason that this company, if it's doing 20, 30 million, it's not unreasonable that a company would pay $200 million for the company. Okay.
There is no possibility that something similar exists in the market.
We don't think there is, but that's certainly a possibility. It certainly is more risky at this point in time because we could all put our money in and we could have a big failure before we can get to the fall. Again, there is that risk of happening, or that we don't quite get there, so we got to put a little bit more money in.
Are you prepared to start producing them?
Well, right now I'm prepared to produce continuously prototypes. So first, we cover the first basis. So it's just to have the engineering, then the CNC, making the parts, assembling the prototype, testing, and then back to the design board. So we have everything, everything is here right now.
Well, let's say that somebody in Munich tells you that they're like 500 of this by the end of the year.
They are going to like to have, let's say, first a pilot program. We are prepared to respond on that quickly.
If you do get a contract, you'll probably be making them next year. It'll be in May, so it'll take 6-8 months to be in production. The risk of an investment like this, where the possibility of you simply after 6 months, if you sell the whole company, the returns is very small. The risk is extremely high.
90% of new businesses fail, and 80% of them fail within the first 5 years.
So you obviously got to be comfortable with that. If that's not comfortable, you can wait to the fall and do it at that point. Certainly an option, or this option. You kind of got to think through that and make sure it's something you really want to do.
Is there any flexibility where you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Because the 400,000 is the big bulk of the investment, right. And it's a significant risk.
50% of individuals that say they're trying to start a company are still trying to start a company 3 years later. They haven't actually started it, nor have they quit.
There's risk. I did 5 startups. I had a single, double, strikeout, and home run. I must have had more than that.
And I believe in the product. I think it has a tremendous amount of potential. And I'm not an engineer, but I build airplanes, and I can tell you that if I can put 3 of this in the experimental airplanes that I built, to put 3 of these devices, in the 3 gears I can eliminate 150 pounds of hydraulic stuff, cables, lines. I think it has a great future. All right, I got the message.
We're all pretty excited.
I'd love to take 3 and take them to my hangar, work with them.
But first, put your money.
June 17th. Carlos and Greg flew to Germany this weekend to visit the Automatica show next week in Munich.
It's a show that's centered on factory automation. There are a lot of these sort of technical trade fairs in Germany especially, where there's probably 300 companies or so that it's like the whole ecosystem for factory automation is there.
Greg thought it a good idea that both he and Carlos visit the show together and learn firsthand what the potential customers and also the competition are doing.
We have no product portfolio. We have an idea of what products we need to develop. A month ago, we thought there was a certain kind of product that we need to develop because that's what the largest robot suppliers in the world were using. Now, after, talking to some partners, looking around at what's going on, it might be that there's a slightly different tier that could use us maybe faster. We get into production faster.
They will meet up at the trade show with Barry Cook, who is an old colleague of mine that I've known for 20-some years.
About mid-year 2018, I got a call from Jim Fontaine. Jim asked if I'd be interested in getting involved, and I said, well, let's figure out where I could contribute first.
Barry is a very smart engineer, but also an excellent engineering manager.
It was clear this company was at the seed funding. The ink had hardly dried on the founding papers. There was some fortunate timing in that shortly after we had discussed this, one of the premier trade shows for robots and industrial automation was occurring in Munich, which is less than an hour drive from my house.
Barry has tentatively agreed to join our new startup. He will be walking the floor with Greg and Carlos and also act as our German language interpreter.
I'm going to walk around. We don't have a booth. Badges that say Modus Labs. No one knows what the hell that is. Shake some hands. Talk about what do you guys do.
It would be a lot more effective if we could actually show them a prototype, but we really don't have anything ready yet. All the guys have to show is a couple of videos of the past prototypes on Carlos's iPhone, but mostly Carlos's ability to sell the vision and the promise of his new gear.
It weighs half of what an equivalent gear drive would weigh. It costs half of what the competing gear drives can produce and has much better performance.
This is the first time we'll expose potential customers to Carlos's new invention. To be honest, we're all worried that the robot manufacturers will have no interest in Carlos's gear. Or worse yet, that it's really not revolutionary after all, or that this technology was already invented and tried years ago and it failed. I have mixed feelings about losing a week of prototype development to go to the show, but I guess it's probably best to find out now, before we raise any more funding, whether or not Carlos's design is really revolutionary or just a pipe dream.
So I'm coming back from Germany with a sense that I really need to deliver, on this device. It needs to happen. And it needs to, basically, I have the pressure that it has to be not only good, but it has to be very good.
How do you deal with pressure?
The work.
June 26th. The guys just returned from the Germany trade show. We were all very anxious before the show, but now they're bringing back news which is very exciting. It's almost too good to be true. We are all trying to control our exuberance and not let each other see how giddy we are. A Nazi robotics engineer told the guys that if this product is true, it'll change the global robotics market. This news changes everything.
I'm pretty sure this is a direct drive. This is where, see how fast this thing has to move. It's a Stoively robot. It's sorting hollandaise sauce packets, but it's pretty fast. You can see it missed one on the corner.
Okay, let's talk about the show. It's a big turning point. You said confirmed what we were hoping. So I know when you guys came back, I was pleasantly surprised to hear your feedback, but I also thought you guys might be a little bit too optimistic. So frankly, when Barry said, who's more of a German pragmatist, he was pleasantly surprised. He said he was skeptical going into it.
It was funny because here come three guys, two out of Texas, one a Texan, one a Peruvian, and then a guy claiming he's from Germany but speaking like an American.
A very stoic German type. He doesn't really get excited very much about things, so we didn't expect that out of him.
We didn't have much to show. We didn't have any hardware. We had a video and just Carlos's ability to describe and excite people.
Yeah, on my cell phone, I say, okay, watch. I'm going to play a video. Just watch it. Okay, first watch it. It does it just 1 minute.
In general, willing to spend time to speak to 3 guys from a startup that had no product to show. And not only that, but they got visibly excited about what we had to say.
Barry is very well grounded. He's going to give you the honest answer.
I think I could figure out what an actuator was, but it took a while to come up to speed on the latest technology being used within robotics.
The people who get it, they are really getting this thing. They really react positively to this new technology.
Okay, I don't know the product yet. I haven't seen anything. I'm not sure that Carlos can do what he says he can do. But if that could be the case, there seems to be a potential there to enter the market relatively easily.
They came back saying every single potential customer who saw this was excited about it.
If we can do it, there's a market. If you build it, they will come.
I didn't expect that we would make a really solid connection with, for example, with any Japanese companies. Our assumption was that they were firmly entrenched with their current solutions, but it was a pleasant surprise that at least one of the Japanese companies that's a leader in the market was interested in us. After having a few days to follow up, I mean, it really seems positive. So hopefully we're not in a case where we have a spurt of interest and, then everything just trails off. There are like 60 opportunities, something like that. And so Nachi, I sent an email to the contact that we were given in Japan, the mechanical design director.
Well, Nachi's been around for a long time. We actually started our business back in 1928. We began in the world of the cutting tool business and steel mill business, and then we started graduating to get into automation. Evolution of what we've done from back in the 1960s of having a servo robot to here we are, and as you look around and see all the different models and shapes that we bring to the marketplace.
And so Nachi, mechanical design director, he got right back, asked some pretty detailed questions. These 2 most important questions were about the price and that bearing, whether or not we included.
So they came back, asked you 2 questions, both answers were positive, and then I've just seen sometimes there's a flurry of interest, like you said, and then it kind of dies down. Is that because sort of the after-show excitement, they want to get information?
Didn't think that we would have this level of commercial engagement so quickly. I would think we should plan to see Nachi within the next month.
Okay.
I think before the end of July, just optimistically.
So Greg said he woke up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. The day before yesterday, I woke up at 3 and I go, what if Mr. Ito doesn't reply to my email? What if no one replies?
The same night I woke up about 3 in the morning going, what if we can't raise any more money? What if we get to the end of the year and no one wants to invest? Carlos has yet to resolve the original issues of noise and vibration and hasn't begun to even test the performance of torsional stiffness and backlash. Yet he's already started the design of GB40 in response to customer inputs from the Germany show.
This is, by the way, this is the first revision of GB40.
Well, I hadn't seen this part before. At what point would you actually start to build it?
Pretty soon, I'm already making the drawings. Planning to have the prototypes or the GB40 ready for that meeting.
I'm anxious to see that thing working. Looks great on the animation.
So...
No pressure.
No pressure.
No.
It's nice to kind of be on our way. I find myself at a bit of a crossroads. I must decide if we continue down the current due diligence path of requiring Carlos to work out some of the technical issues before moving to the next phase. Or do we respond to the new information learned in Germany and bypass the requirement on Carlos and move full steam ahead to the next phase?
So at this point, you know that we are kind of going to the next phase. I need to focus on the client. I need to focus on the tasks I have in front, on delivering exactly per the spec.
We knew that if we could implement those specs, we would be about twice the performance of the next product at lower cost and still have 60% margin. Sounds a little bit too good to be true, but even if it's less than that, it's still just fantastic.
The understanding, though, I think that everyone always had was that we were going to go through a rigorous verification cycle where we would really prove all of this stuff out.
On one hand, you want to be very pragmatic and not get distracted during the due diligence process.
You want to keep the emotion out. You want to be disciplined. You want to be thorough and find the facts. Let the facts reveal how things are to go.
On the other hand, when new information presents itself, you do want to make sure you take advantage of it.
So when Jim needs to make the investment decision or the recommendation decision, he needs to ask himself, how much do I trust myself in assessing that technology? Can I trust my gut? He needs to ask himself, does he have the competence required to assess that kind of technology?
We had no reservations at all about the market potential and our ability to reach into it if we could pull through what Carlos was proposing.
Up to this point in time, I've risked my own money and my own time. If we're going to move full steam ahead to take advantage of this opportunity, we're going to have to build out the team, and in order to build out the team, we're going to have to raise a lot more funding right now. And so we ended up basically skipping the step of having to work out the noise in the product and started to raise funding. I reached out to another half dozen or so angel investors that I had done deals with before that knew me quite well and trusted me.
The level of trust that you need to have, whether it's in yourself or even other resources, depends on the level of risk that you're taking. When Jim makes an investment with his own money, that's the risk that he's taking. He's going to lose his own money. But when he makes an investment decision or recommendation with other people's money, he's risking three things. He's risking his own money, he's risking other people's money, he's risking his reputation in making that recommendation.
I told all these angel investors that of all the companies I've been involved with, I've never been more excited than I am about Modus.
You want passion for your entrepreneur. You want zero passion in your fellow angel investors. To be passionate about the discipline of the outcome versus making an outcome happen is just critical.
Typically $50,000 to $100,000 a piece, and we were able to really quickly raise $750,000 in about 2 weeks. The pace of what we were doing started heating up to the point we said, there's an opening that we have to take advantage of right now. There's an apparent excitement for this product. All these stars are aligned that we can't go slow. We need to put the throttle on and go forward. Then it turned out Joe's other job, which he thought was not going to be that much of a drain, was not only a full-time job, it was a 60, 70-hour-a-week job where he was literally traveling in the U.S. and internationally half the time. So Joe was simply not available.
Early on, Jim had maybe half jokingly at the beginning of our contact asked me if I'd be willing to move over to the U.S. At that time, he was looking for a president to run the company.
He didn't want any management position. He didn't want to be the CEO. He didn't want to deal with those issues. So Barry's been a very key part of the team, even though he has been in Germany.
I took that as a good sign that he would consider me for the position, but I told him I didn't think that was in the cards at all, Jim.
Suddenly, we're in a situation where Joe's not around to help. I was wondering whether Joe was really going to come on. We're going to lead these guys off a cliff. There's no one there to help them raise money when you run out of money.
I didn't want to say, yeah, I'm all in, and then pull out, which I've had experiences with that. And so I know what it's like when you commit and everybody moves further down the process, and then you decommit.
What insight can you give me to Joe regarding Joe? How do I best interface with him? Jim briefed me on the past history that he'd had with Joe, of his background, that he's more out of the sales side. He's not as much the in-depth technical focus, is more from the high level in the sales, and pragmatic and generally easy to get along with.
Building a team, when we're looking at the CEO, does this guy look like the kind of person that can attract at the right time this kind of financial person, at this time the right kind of engineer?
What you're seeing is the very first one versus the present day one.
At this time, the right kind of national sales manager. You don't have all those people at the start.
I was worried that we got too far where Joe would say, well, I just can't come on, or I can't do it.
And part of the struggle was, do I want to continue working for the company that I was working for, which were colleagues from a previous venture, or do I want to go all in on another startup, invest money, or was I basically done?
It's just the normal part of a startup, because you don't get something for nothing, and people have to sacrifice short-term gain for long-term gratification.
Building a management team requires a CEO that can identify the kind of people that are going to go to work for somewhere between 25 and 50% less than they'd make in a corporate job, that are going to take stock options. They're understanding, and you're creating that momentum and enthusiasm within a team.
The more excitement we got in this job, the more he realized, he said, it's like a parent being gone. He said, I'm missing the fun part.
The opportunity to join a company that's headquartered in Dallas, in an industry that I find interesting, with some interesting people at the very beginning, and becoming a founder was check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark.
A couple of weeks ago, Joe said, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to leave that other job. I'm in. I'm all in. I'm convinced that we want to go forward.
So when I made the decision, I was all in.
It's a challenge to be able to take highly talented individuals and be able to bring them all together to work as a team. What Modus has done is they brought in a new president who, from a leadership standpoint, will have the challenge, and I think he's up to it, to be able to put the technology capability that a fellow like Carlos has with other capabilities of the other individuals at the company to go into manufacturing and doing the financing and bringing all that together in order to make a successful startup.
The challenge we had, frankly, was since he hadn't been around much the last 3 or 4 months, the other members of the team said, is Joe really committed? Is he going to come on?
We were having concerns because every time we were having a meeting, Joe wasn't there. So we didn't have the opportunity to really talk to him or see what was his view. He was still on the fences, kind of looking around.
When you form a team, it's a team in a foxhole, and does that teammate have my back? Is he going to give everything he has for this?
Part of trust is seeing the other person behave in a predictable way, in the way we expect them. So when Jim and the team are expecting Joe to join, Joe behaves in an unpredictable way. He's still not joining. He's not joining, and he's not joining. And that is contradictory to what they expect. Because of that, they start losing trust.
I thought at that time it still wasn't certain that he would come on as the CEO. So we all went out to dinner, or it ended up being dinner.
We went together and we talked to Jim and say, hey man, we have this concern, but Joe is never there.
Maybe they saw his that he wasn't in, because he wasn't in.
Carlos and I were concerned because he had no experience with any kind of hardware manufacturing. At least not that was recent, and certainly not in mechanical engineering related field.
It was probably the first time I sort of got my head around what does it mean to be in the hardware business.
We had that concern. We had concern whether he'd be able to keep up the pace and these things like that. So we expressed our concerns to Jim over a few beers.
So they're all in. It's just that they're wondering about that. And I said, well, if I didn't know Joe for 30 years, at some point, you just got to trust me that this guy will be the guy that can take it to the next level.
You remember the movie Zero Dark 30? There's a part where the Navy SEALs play with horseshoes, and one of them asks, what makes you so certain that we're going after Bin Laden? And the other one points to Maya, the CIA agent, and says, her confidence. At that point, Jim's confidence that Joe is joining is enough for the other members to trust that Joe is coming.
And then Jim told us, Joe is a great guy, and he has all the skills, to manage his thing, to raise money and all that. And believe me, we are going to need more money, to get this thing off. I sent him an email saying, okay, man, you're our CEO. I'm ready. I'll follow your direction, We'll do everything we can. Set up the direction. I'm going to be the best I can to follow that.
In the end, I told Jim, okay. Said, I'll support Joe, 100%. Said, you'll never hear from me again on this. I will never come back to you and say, that was the wrong thing to do. I'll never complain about Joe being the CEO.
Another thing we didn't know is how we were going to make these in production and where we were going to make these in production.
And at the time, we were anticipating going into production, and we needed a person in the company with a lot of experience, not only in manufacturing, but QA.
Carlos has invented, and he's the visionary in the beginning of this company. And the next stage of the company is moving into manufacturing, where the expertise and the talent and the experience necessary is in other people's hands.
Carlos can build one of anything, but he's never built 10,000 of anything. We need a different personality, a different part of the brain that works in a certain way to be part of the team, to offset what Carlos is going to do. And that person is David.
Carlos and Modus contacted me to discuss working with the company. We've got this device. We want to be in production by the end of the year. So he came to me and said, we can turn this into real life stuff. He says, that's not my thing. I create and invent. And it is my thing. That's what I've been doing for the last 30 plus years. It was exciting in a lot of different ways. First of all, for Carlos, because I liked the guy and I really wanted him to succeed. Second, the opportunity to bootstrap a company is big. And just the energy and watching all of that progress, it's a lot of fun. You don't want to turn that down if you don't need to. This is the environment that I thrive in, where you come in and this is your office, right? It's whatever it is that day. You can't beat that. What's my challenge? What do I get to do? What kind of fun do I get to have? What kind of new things do I get to do? It's a really big deal to invent something and be able to take that out into the world. When you push really, really hard on that top bearing, you're not just pushing this way, the whole thing's going to twist a bit. This is his invention. That's a big deal. So I would love for him to do really well. I've been involved in several startups before, taught me the value of the people involved. So Joe's got a background in sales. That's awesome as a CEO position. Jim's got a background in just getting things started, and he's got a lot of successes behind him. That's huge. Greg is awesome. Just having somebody in that position looking at the market and studying the strategy and what it's got to do, because so many people don't understand that marketing and sales are two different animals. So it's an awesome set of perspectives, all working in the same direction.
Passion has 3 different focuses. One is passion for inventing. So I think Carlos is clearly passionate for inventing. There's no question about that. He just wants to tinker with his product. The second type is passion for founding. This would be the entrepreneur who loves starting ventures. They're just excited about creating a business out of nothing. They're excited to put together people and processes and funding to launch a venture. I think Jim is really interested in passion for founding. He's interested in taking this idea of a company and turning it into an actual company. The third type of passion is passion for growing or developing a company. We think about Howard Schultz, Starbucks fame. He didn't found Starbucks. He took a small coffee house in Seattle and blew it up into a worldwide brand. To me, Greg is passionate about growing and developing the company because he's interested in customer discovery and reaching out and figuring out what the market is and how he can grow that market. And that's what passion for developing is about.
Carlos is just a whirling dervish of design and invention, so I don't really want to control anything that guy does. I just want to grab it as it goes past and turn it into a viable product and get it out into the world. But we really haven't beaten up the design yet. We need to do a design review to really understand the tolerances that we have in the design to make sure everything's going to go together and to understand how the forces are going to play. We really want to have something out in the world as quickly as possible, and we want to make sure that it's right. Getting the prototypes so that we can really test them, that's going to be the first big hurdle.
It was now August, and I was really excited about the technical team we had assembled, and also that Joe Pollard had joined as CEO on a full-time basis. I could now transition my CEO duties over to Joe, and I would focus on marketing on a part-time basis. We were planning to introduce the product in 6 months at a trade show in February. We had a lot of work to do to get the product production ready. We also had a lot of marketing work to prepare for the product launch, including setting up a really high-quality website, creating all the marketing collateral materials. We really needed some expert marketing help. I had a candidate I wanted to hire, but agreed to placate Joe by meeting his candidate.
Jim and I met Kimberly, who I had worked with on a couple of occasions previously, and I have a lot of respect. She was running her own consulting business, perfect, right? Because we didn't really need a full-time marketing person.
Joe and I hit it off. We hadn't seen each other for a while. I've worked with Joe Pollard when he was a VP of sales, and I've worked with him when he was an CEO, and I always thought he was a great CEO. I knew Joe, but I didn't know Jim. He was a little bit of a tough cookie when I first met him, a little gruff. I remember when I was talking to him, I was like, how do how do I turn this? How do I get a smile out of him at least before, the end of the conversation, just to see, do I even want to work here or be involved with these people? Because I wasn't too sure.
I probably went in a little skeptical, but she understood not only marketing, but also machinery and milling. She had worked at similar companies.
We sat down and she goes, I know a little bit about this business. You need to have a shaft here and you put a motor on it and you slide it into the opening and you're off and running. And
the reason why I was excited is I thought I could really lend a hand to this startup because I used to work at Cincinnati Millicron and I was very familiar with how to make gears or metal parts and the difficulty involved in that. And I was the first woman who was awarded the position of a sales project engineer. And I remember I was going around the shop. I spent a month or more, starting off when they first get the steel rods in, heat treating, how they grind the parts. I actually work with the guys. So you've got all these dynamics and variables that work together. It's an art and a science because the metal has a mind of its own. The viscosity of the coolant has a mind of its own. Every single machine works a little bit differently. At Cincinnati Millicron, I knew what it took. It's hard to make high precision parts.
Kimberly's knowledge of marketing, brand development, and PR was amazing, but frankly, what was more amazing was her knowledge of precision manufacturing.
Jim did not lend a card. He didn't look at me. He didn't hold my stare.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with Kimberly, but I wasn't totally sure, so I had her review my marketing plan and give me her thoughts.
So Jim presented me with a quick little presentation, and I remember thinking as he was talking, I wouldn't do it that way. That's a little kind of being a little aggressive on already going to, a trade show at this point. So of course I had to figure out a way to tell Jim in a nice way, since I didn't know him.
By the end of the interview process, I knew Kimberly would make a great addition to the team.
When he left, he said, yeah. He just got up and on his way out, he's like, yeah, this was good. I approve, or something like that. And I was like, I guess I made it. So.
We had a marketing person who could really complement what Jim was doing. Happy with us, we were happy with her.
I was going to come on as a consultant in the beginning and then transfer into January, about 4 months later, as a VP of marketing.
From a startup perspective, in order to be successful, there's different stages of a startup. And so Carlos is the visionary, clearly. Jim came in, he has a lot of experience and a lot of capability with taking companies to the next stage. And you get into what I call the terrible twos. So all of a sudden you bring in Joe into that equation.
By the fall of 2018, a dream team of 7 very experienced and very qualified people were assembled that will serve as the management core team as the company grows. A few months earlier, they had dropped the requirement that Carlos prove out his technology and proceeded with the seed funding round and raised a total of $1.5 million, giving the company enough money to get to the middle of 2019.
So we ended up with $1.5 million, which I thought, where we are and what we're doing, that would allow us to last a long time in the startup world. I felt good about it.
Building the companies, working with a team, and building a business, there's nothing more exciting, nothing more rewarding.
We had the team, we had significant funding, we had customers waiting on our product. What remained was overcoming the product technical issues.
You look like yourself.
The obstacles were significant, but I felt like we had the team that could figure out how to overcome those obstacles, as long as we didn't run out of money. But frankly, most days I really wondered whether the promise of Carlos's technology was just too good to be true.